Good afternoon. Welcome to the Tuesday, April 7th meeting of the Watershed Committee. We have several members of the committee here as well as members of staff. So first order of business, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Second item is the approval of the minutes from March 3rd. I don't know if anybody has any comments, concerns.
I don't have any comments, but
Okay.
so I make a motion to accept.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So our second item, we have a guest here this evening. So we have Tom Robinson with Colliers Engineering. Tom's here to speak to us about the climate action plan. So that's something that the town is currently engaged in, working with a separate committee on that. But Tom is going around and sharing that with many of our committees in town and giving kind of an update of progress. I know Linda said she sat through the presentation with the Trails Committee. So this is an informational item for us tonight. I think we'll be at Transportation next week. So he's working his way around. But with that, I'll turn it over to Tom. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Yep, Tom Robinson, Colliers Engineering and Design, Penfield resident, Rochester office, so I'm kind of a local. And yeah, we were selected to assist the town with their climate action plan, which we're into it a couple of months now. So just wanted to speak to this committee and kind of introduce the project, and then we can brainstorm a little bit about how this may connect with some of the things that the Watershed Committee is doing. So we think there's some pretty interesting crossover there, and I mostly want to just introduce the project and go through it, and then we'll have plenty of times for question and discussions. Can you do the next slide? This is not, oh, okay, here we go. So we'll talk a little bit about this project's purpose and how it's supposed to align with some of the New York State climate action goals, an overview of our process and the outcomes that we're after, the current efforts, our next steps, and then Q&A. There we go. So the project purpose, this project is actually divided into two phases. This is phase one, which is focused on town operations and facilities and how they can contribute to reduction of greenhouse gases and impacts from climate change. There will be a phase two in the future, which will be community-wide climate action planning, and that'll engage the public in a robust way, as well as really everything that's happening. So phase one, the town operations, is really sort of the basis and baseline. And we'll learn some things from phase one. We'll apply them to phase two. And then at the end of the day, the town will have a big picture of their climate action strategies. So a few bullet points here. The purpose of the town operations phase one is to work towards reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We're going to look at both climate mitigation and climate adaptation, and we'll talk a little bit about what those are. We're looking at short-term, long-term goals, actions, and policies. We are having community engagement through this process as well to keep everybody informed and have some feedback from the public on the phase one. We are looking for opportunities to meet the goals of NYSERDA's Clean Energy CEC program. The town is looking at the New York State DEC Climate Smart Communities program for their goals and objectives, but we're not intending to formally apply for that certification at this point. However, doing this planning will allow the town to enable that if they want to do it in the future. So it was very interesting. The first committee was the Trails Committee, and one of the first questions I got is, what are greenhouse gases? So probably everybody has a general understanding at this point, but the graphic is from NOAA, which does a lot of climate science and data compilation for the federal government. Greenhouse gases are gases that are in the atmosphere. They allow sunlight and solar energy to come through, but they actually hold in some of the radiated heat that is trying to leave the surface. They're naturally occurring in our atmosphere. They're very important in our atmosphere. If we don't have enough of them, we have an endless ice age, and there's no life on the planet. If we have too many, not enough heat can escape, and we tend to have some global warming trends, which is what we're seeing now. And at this point, science points to the fact that some of this is produced by burning of fossil fuels, so there is some human influence on what is otherwise a natural process. And we're just trying to understand that balance point. It's really all about balance. You don't want too much, you don't want too little. And the reason they're called greenhouse gases is they're like a blanket or the roof of a greenhouse that lets energy come through but then retains it for the plants inside. The main types that we're typically talking about are carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, methane, and water vapor. There's some other minor ones as well, but those are the big ones. So New York State has established climate action goals, and the town of Penfield is trying to align with those to meet different New York State requirements, and that will certainly allow us to leverage certain funding sources for grants related to climate change. So overall, New York State is looking to reduce greenhouse gas emissions 85% below the 1990 level, and they're trying to achieve that goal by 2050. So that's the big overarching, which sounds pretty ambitious, and it is. So goals and strategies for subject areas include energy, transportation, land use, livable communities, waste, materials management. Some of those are also identified in the Finger Lakes Regional Sustainability Plan, which obviously Monroe County and the town of Penfield fall into that as well. So one of the things that's interesting in the town of Penfield is how the Climate Action Plan intersects and is mutually supportive with other town planning initiatives. Your recently completed comprehensive plan update talks about climate smart goals, so we're paying attention to those. The town is currently undertaking an active transportation plan, so climate-focused goals are part of that, but certainly the transportation sector is a big emitter of greenhouse gases, so we see some overlap there as well. So you'll see kind of those areas in the center where all three plans intersect are very interesting to us. And potentially they can give the town a lot of bang for a buck in terms of investing in enhancements and improvements. So some of the other communities around that have done climate action planning on various levels include Monroe County, the city of Rochester, the town of Brighton, and then currently the town of Gates is working on a climate adaptation plan. So that's in progress. The Penfield plan, we're actually modeling quite a bit after what Monroe County did with their climate action planning. They did a similar Part 1 and Part 2, where the first level was the county facilities and operations, and then the second phase was the wider community-based climate action planning for the whole county. So we're communicating very carefully with Monroe County to take advantage of the data, information, and kind of tips they can give us for an efficient and effective plan. One of the first recommendations from that plan was to hire a sustainability coordinator from Monroe County, which they did. So Madison Quinn is on our project committee to advise us and help us with information that the county can give. So that's a strong collaboration, and we're going to take advantage of that. If you're interested, the websites are still active for both the Monroe County plan and I believe the town of Brighton plan as well. I'm not sure about Rochester. I think they're about due for an update on their plan and are starting to work on that. But if you just Google those, you can get to them and see how they approach some of the same issues and challenges. Okay, so the kind of the two sides of the climate action coin are adaptation and mitigation. Adaptation refers to actions to manage the impacts, reduce the impacts of climate change. Mitigation are taking actions to actually try to reduce the emissions that are causing it. So you can kind of see how those things work together. In some cases, certain buckets of enhancements will address both areas. But if you can put adaptation and mitigation together, you're going to have a climate resilient community. And resilience is normally defined as the ability to prevent climate change damage and recover quickly when damage occurs. So minimizing the damage through your community design and operations and policies, but also being able to bounce back quickly from things like droughts, floods, climate extremes. So we are targeting all of that with both Phase 1 and Phase 2. So here's a new slide, which I threw in, again, thinking a little bit about some of the comments we had at the first Trails Committee meeting. The Eco Restoration Alliance was actually, it's a consortium of international scientists and climate specialists, but it was started by a former RIT professor. His name is John Scholl. Really interesting individual, but they talk about carbon tunnel vision, their group does. And what they mean by that is, look, it's great to have an emphasis on reducing greenhouse gases. That's very important. But that by itself actually isn't going to fix things at this point. So they advocate for, yes, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but also look towards preserving and restoring the ecosystems that naturally balance our climate. So, when we talked about the right amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, a lot of that balance is achieved by the different ecosystems all around the planet. So you hear about destruction of the Amazon rainforest and how that actually affects everybody around the world through climate change. That's an example. So they advocate for view all your projects through that lens. If you can preserve these ecosystem services and enhance the environments that produce those, that's going to go a long way towards keeping our climate in balance and reducing the negative impacts. I threw this in here because I thought this might be of interest if we're talking about watershed management, and there may be some interesting things there. Again, really interesting website, ton of video links, so you can kind of pick and choose, okay, I got 3 minutes, I got 5 minutes, and do a little self-teaching about what the Eco Restoration Alliance does. But it was locally started, and I look to them as a source of information, and I think their perspective is interesting. So given that, I was thinking about watersheds in Penfield, and I just wanted to sort of grab one piece and have our company AI bot do a little research for me. So I grabbed the 1,000-acre swamp, which is 500 acres, mostly wooded wetland. It's in the, I want to say, the Hipbrook watershed in Penfield. It's also on the Trails Committee radar because we're thinking about a community connector trail that will go through there. But we know that individual trees perform carbon sequestration, so they actually keep carbon out of the atmosphere. But the 500 acres of northern wooded wetland in the 1,000-acre swamp they reduce carbon by about 850 metric tons per year. So that's significant, and that is, I believe it's a mix of the tree canopy and the soils themselves. So when we look at watershed projects, we can look at them through this lens of what they can contribute to climate mitigation and climate adaptation. It's important to note that soils, healthy soils, are a big part of this. I think we do think about tree canopies and what they're doing for us, but the soils are rich in fungi, mycelium, microorganisms that are a huge carbon sink and store and keep carbon out of the atmosphere. So it's just an example locally of how natural systems can be considered as part of climate mitigation. And then, of course, people like to attach dollar values to everything. So this is just sort of a breakdown of those ecosystem services being provided by the 1,000 Acre Swamp. And if you were going to use sort of national standards to put dollar values to it, what it looks like. So your carbon storage, based on the sort of standard number of $208 per metric ton, you're getting around $200,000 worth of carbon storage out of the 1,000 Acre Swamp. So all we have to do to maintain that is don't mess with the swamp. That's pretty easy. But when we have an opportunity to choose between, for example, in a watershed project, gray and green infrastructure, consider these values for green infrastructure and what they can provide to us. It's always a question of balance and compromise, but it's good to have this information at your fingertips so you can make an informed decision. Okay. So back to the climate action plan. These are kind of our steps that we're going through. We're currently in the process of developing our greenhouse gas inventory. That'll be a baseline. After that, we'll, in collaboration with all our project partners, select reduction goals. We'll use case studies and best management practices. So we're kind of following the latest, greatest information. We'll identify and analyze action, and then finally we'll prioritize and make recommendations to the town what actions are most valuable for them moving forward. Again, near-term, long-term recommendations. This graphic just talks about guiding principles and some of the emission sources. I would say the emission sources list is not limited to these things, but these are good examples of carbon emitters. So street lights, buildings, the vehicle fleets, the equipment, solid waste, wastewater operations. And for phase one, we're looking at the town operations and facilities, and they're currently providing us data, and we're kind of going through it together and formatting it and getting ready for the next steps. So this is a breakdown of the inventory methodology. So review the town's operations, look at all the sources, collect and organize the data, which is going fairly smooth so far, calculate the emissions, and then develop metrics based on our final list of goals. So we're just getting started and getting organized with the data collection. So the things you see on this slide are actually snips from the Monroe County phase one, but you'll get an idea of the things that the town will be looking to produce. So they're looking at the different sectors, transportation fleets, buildings and facilities, and so forth, and just seeing how those break down proportionally in terms of contributing greenhouse gases. That'll help us understand how to prioritize our goals going forward. So we're looking for this project to be roughly a year in length, and we're just into it a couple of months now. We hope to have phase one final report basically by the end of the year. So several steps we need to go through. We're doing a lot of stakeholder outreach, like talking to these committees. We'll have 2 public workshops, kind of one early in the project when we've got the first batch of data together that we can discuss, and then another one later in the fall where we have a draft plan and we can explain to people what we're recommending and still take some public input and make revisions as necessary. There's not an independent website, but there's a web page on the town website for this project that's up and running. We'll try to keep that updated with information as it comes in. And we're just kind of advertising that and getting that out to the public so people can look at it and stay informed and follow the project as it moves along in the next several months. That's it in a nutshell, and I'm happy to take any questions. I'll answer as best I can. I should have let you know at the beginning that I'm not a climate scientist. I'm actually a landscape architect, so I look at this information and this kind of data analysis through the lens of how does this translate into how we should be designing open space and nature-based projects. Yeah.
Hi, Tom. I'm Donna Spinella. I'm wondering if you could possibly send us your presentation via email
Absolutely.
for starters.
We've got it now, so
Oh, we've got it now. Okay,
he
great.
brought it tonight, we downloaded it, so we'd be happy to share it with the committee.
Okay, that's perfect. And a second question, your comments about the 1,000-acre swamp reminded me of something that we've discussed in here with a little bit of concern, which is that the New York State DEC has a new policy in terms of mapping of wetlands. And I don't know if you're familiar with that or not.
I'm not in detail, but we do a lot of wetland permitting, and I know that landscape is changing with DEC. So they're definitely going through some revisions in terms of how they view and permit and protect wetlands.
So I think, given that this meeting is broadcast and also some people like to watch it later, if you and maybe Mark needs to jump in here, could explain a little bit about how that process has changed or it's in the process of changing and how that will potentially have an impact on how we go forward defining wetlands, working with wetlands, and so forth.
Want me to jump in, or you want?
Yeah, go ahead.
So as of January 1st, 2025, the DEC used to have mapped wetlands that were out there, they were defined. As of January 1st, they got rid of their official mapping. That being said, they've used to be 12.4 acres is what was a state wetland and above. They've lowered that limit down. Now we even have it on our website or our web viewer. They have there was their wetland mapping, they still show it even though they're not official, and they've added these informational wetland areas. So they've encompassed more of the areas that used to be federal wetlands. Federal wetlands had no buffer before, and I think Mike's pulling up, a sample location. These new informational wetlands basically say it may be wetland, it may not be. So it just adds a little bit more time to the process of going out, and first off, you need to submit a jurisdictional determination letter, so a JD letter. You need to send that in, ask, do we have wetlands or not? That's a 90-day process. The DEC responds back, says yes, no, maybe. From there, you would need to get a wetland delineation, show where your wetlands are. The one thing, or the biggest thing that I think has changed from this is now there's a 100-foot buffer to a state wetland that is not with federal. So, better for the environment. Now you've got a 100-foot buffer to that. That adds some additional protection to the wetlands that are out there. It's just added more process, to developer side of things. Town side of things is, anytime we want to go in and do any work in a stream, pond maintenance, what we talk about often, it's added, a little more process on our end to, one, get that wetland delineation and go through the joint application for permit, which sends a permit application into the DEC and the Army Corps for any time you want to dig or dredge in these areas. So a lot of the consultants, Colliers and others are getting their arms around it, as well as the town, to understand what's going on. That's additional information that we share back with any new applicant potential that comes in, resident that wants to build a home or do something else in their property. We've been working to educate them as well, so they understand that there's some additional steps and process in that.
And Tom, how will this affect the work that you will be doing on this project going forward, or will it have an impact?
I would say it's probably not going to have much of a direct impact on this particular project, the climate action plan, especially the phase one. But, you know, we have to be mindful of that because we try to advocate for conservation of the functional natural systems like wetlands that can contribute to our climate mitigation. You know, as Mark described it, I guess it's a good news, bad news thing. I mean, the good news is the new regulations are actually more protective of wetlands on a couple of different fronts, but they make the project process more time-consuming and therefore more expensive as well. So, you know, it's going to impact project budgets moving forward as well as schedules. But the impacts to the climate action plan are probably indirect, but it's very important that we're aware of them as we kind of engage with natural systems in Penfield.
Especially with phase one. Phase one is basically data gathering. At this phase is how much, you know, power do we use? What's our gas?
Right.
What's our electric? Sarah Waterman's working closely with DPW to what are all our RG&E bills for all our facilities, pump stations. What are the use of gas for all of our vehicles? So the first phase is basically an assessment of what are we using now, you know, and then setting the goals going forward is, okay, how do we, you know, reduce that?
Thank you.
Yes.
In one slide, it was talking about New York State wants to have 40% reduction of emissions by 2030. It's only like 3.5 years away. How close are we to achieve it? I mean, I'm all in favor of reducing emission by all means, but if they're pushing electric like they're trying to, the infrastructure and the power plants that are not producing emissions, so they have to get rid of coal firing plants. How are they going to do it?
That's a good question. So that's kind of the big challenge of electrification as climate action, as, you know, can you produce the power? How are you producing the power, and can the grid itself handle it?
Yeah.
So I think, you know, a lot of people are definitely interested. You know, that reduction was not from today's level, but from 1990.
Right.
And, you know, I think I'll probably back check that after this meeting to see if there's updates on how that's been progressing and how close we're getting. Because, yeah, it's not far away.
I had an RG&E representative at my house working on my gas meter, and he was an official high up in RG&E. And he made the comment that with the infrastructure we have right now, RG&E can't handle it.
Right.
And I'm sure RG&E is not the only one that can't handle it.
No, you're absolutely right. The grid's being challenged. I mean, we're seeing that in some development proposals that are actually being held back if the energy's not available.
I'm a retired land surveyor, and whenever we did a subdivision development, we had to get a letter from RG&E that they could supply power and gas to it.
Yep. And the answer to some of those now is no. So, yeah, they're ambitious goals, but there's huge challenges.
Yeah.
Anybody else have a comment, question for Tom? Well, thank you for coming today. Thanks for sharing with us. I say we'll keep, you know, a close eye on how this goes and update the committee as it progresses. So appreciate you coming out and sharing.
Absolutely. Good to meet you all. And if you have any thoughts after this meeting, just get them to me and we'll weave them into the project.
And then we'll
Thank you.
happily share with the committee the document, and those that aren't here tonight, we'll share it with them as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
So we have a few other updates today and things to discuss. So we're coming out of the Stormwater Coalition, and I'll put Amy on the spot. Just if you want to give a little briefing of kind of where we are and where we went with the annual report this year.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I know last time we brought to you the draft annual report and the draft stormwater management program plan. The annual report was submitted to the DEC prior to the April 1st deadline, so that's all set. The stormwater management program plan has been updated to, you know, meet where we are in terms of meeting the requirements of the permit, and now we're starting to look forward to really digging into the requirements, the 3-year requirements that I mentioned before, and that includes a lot of mapping.
That segues right into where I was going. So
Perfect.
it's like we planned it. So we've been working with another engineering consultant to actually do the survey mapping of all of our storm, and we've done sanitary at the same time since they're out there. So we'd asked them for an update. So they did mapping from last year, but as from September of this year, even given the hard winter, they mapped 1,680 storm structures and 612 sanitary structures. So they're continuing on that. We did get grant from last year, so that helps. And then we also were able to get a CFA grant for this year. So we're working on finalizing the documentation for that. So that money helps supplement, what the town board has already contributed to it. As budget season's coming back around, we'll look and kind of see where we stand. So as Amy had shared, we're going into year 3. This needs to be completed by the end of year 5. So I think we're in a good place right now, but it's something we'll need to continue to make sure we meet the goal at the end. And obviously, Ed's well aware, having survey grade of any utility, and Patrick on the DPW side, to know where our infrastructure is, the size of our pipes, as well as the condition of it, being available at the end of it. So one, it's necessary to meet the MS4 requirements, but it'll be a great benefit to us and staff at the end of the day to know where our utilities are and what condition they're in. So that'll be a good benefit to us on that. Any questions on annual report and stormwater updates? Now I'm going to put Mike on the spot now. So just as I think everybody's seen, we've got wet yards lately. We've had a lot of rain. So through the county, again, through the Stormwater Coalition, Mike's pulling up, we've got a rain gauge network across the county. We've got one right at the DPW that collects our data right there, so it's an automated collector. In the most recent, March 31st, I think we got 1.63 inches in a 24-hour period. That's a sizable storm on top of some snow that's still melting and frozen ground. So as you can imagine, we've kind of been dealing with some drainage issues, concerns this week. That led me to reach out to the Andy Sansone at the county and kind of see what did we have for the month of March. So he pulled the 3 closest data points, itemizing each day. We're closing in on 6 inches of rain for the month of March. And he's got the average, the typical average for Monroe County is 2.38. So we're 2.5 times the amount of rainfall that we typically get in the month of March. So
That average, how many years is that based on?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I'm
I
not
know if it
sure
was
what.
like a 30, 40.
Yeah, I know he said the airport had, I think, 5.98 inches, and that broke the record, but I don't know how long they've been recording that. But just trying to level set, as we are getting a lot of questions, concerns from residents. Obviously, Patrick and his crew are out there, cleaning catch basins off, opening up things as much as we can. Encourage residents to clean off your catch basins from leaves from winter time, open up the drainage ways the best you can. We'll maintain them, on the town side. But it has been, and this is again another, data set showing, Mike's highlighting. So this was the week total. So it's, good data that we can get from the county to show and track across the county of, where the rains are coming. I don't like the way this is set up, but on the right side is the most recent rains, and then the data works its way backwards to the left. It's a little odd. So, if you're looking at Penfield, the .01 is a week ago. The .89, I think, was, last week, and then the most recent rains, it's the other way around. It's 8.89, that's Sunday's rain, and then it's working backwards to the later rain. That's the March 31st was the 1.63 inches, but some good data from the county. It helps us to kind of, see what's going on. It also has elevations in the creeks, so, we've shared that many times here. We, monitor those as we've had, drainage concerns down in the Panorama Valley area, and, kind of keep on top of that. But just to kind of give everybody a little baseline, it was a very wet March. We'll see how April goes. But, work closely with the DPW and the Parks crew. I know I was on the phone with Alex in the sewer department today, having him look and flesh out some storm sewers and, get some debris in that area. But if the residents can help clean off catch basins, keep, drains open, you see any plastic bags or, recyclables tend to blow around this time of year and plug up drainage structures, that all impacts the runoff. So a little plug for that.
I'm sorry, what is the horizontal axis?
Days of the week. So
Which days does this correspond
So
with?
that .01, that was Monday's rain, that's Sunday.
Okay,
And Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, so then it goes back to that March 31st
okay,
was the 1.6. So it's a little backwards of what I would kind of think of normal left to right as
yeah,
recent aging, but this shows it the other way. But you can see this, so this shows the data from across the county. A lot of them are on county facilities. So pump stations that they have, so they're named facilities have different locations that they have. I think we're one of the few that has it at the town, since we don't have a sewer treatment plant here. We installed our own at the DPW and paid for it, and then had it integrated into the county system. So those, when it says, Spencerport, they're probably their sewer treatment plant location or a pump station in there. So that this is just the naming convention that the county has for their different rainfall data.
Browncroft, is that down in the Dogway?
I believe so, yes.
Isn't there a-
Mike goes back to the map. There's you can
Yeah,
see
yeah.
the
Yeah,
locations there, and then, so those are the rain gauges. This map doesn't show, we also have stream monitoring levels, so we've got one on Irondequoit Creek, we've got one on Allen Creek. So we keep track of those as well, and those are across the county as well. But we look at this data all the time, and it's interesting for us, and that'd be kind of a good time to share with the committee as well as the residents. Any other questions on that? Okay. I don't think you have any New York State DEC or EPA updates. Things have been fairly quiet on that front. I know they're doing some additional audits. The town of Henrietta is getting audited, I think, any day now, sometime in April.
Yeah.
So actually Henrietta asked us to come and kind of give them some help and some feedback on that, since we've been audited fairly recently. So not that we're experts, but happy to share and show collaboration across the county and the towns, that we're all willing to help each other out and hopefully figure this out together. Not that we have any old business. Excuse me, anybody have any new business to share tonight?
I'd just like to add one thing that our guest speaker, Tom, alluded to, and that is for the survey that the deadline was extended to, the Penfield Forward Tomorrow's Town Spaces survey. I don't know if this shows on a camera very well, but that deadline was extended to April 10th. And this is sort of part of that overall sort of global picture that Tom was talking about, all the little intersections on the Venn diagram of how we make this a more sustainable town altogether, and how we make it a really wonderfully livable town. So I would just encourage people, if you have not done so already, go to the Town of Penfield website, the Penfield Forward Tomorrow's Town Spaces Survey. There's a QR code, and you can link to it and make your voice heard about what you would like to see take shape over the next few years in Penfield.
Yeah, there's a survey related to that. It's mostly focused on buildings, community center, library, recreation, the town hall, courts. But there's also areas you can comment on, what other facilities you'd like to see in town, and, other amenities that, we may or may not have, or, what the vision is the community looking forward. So thank you for that. Anybody else have anything to share? So our next meeting is our actually June field trip tour. So we've got to start thinking about locations we want to go this year and spots to stop out at. I know we kind of think we floated out in the past, Willow Pond. We did some drainage work there. That'd be part of it. And then I think as hopefully weather starts to dry out a little bit, DPW maybe get started in the Pennicott Pond, doing that project as well. So that I kind of float those two spots out of there, but if the committee wants to.
Do you want to take a quick look at how the landslides down in below the mobile home park, how that's looking after a full season after it's been
Yeah,
completed?
we can stop down and take a look at that as well.
Yeah. See how it's,
Yeah, I
See how
mean, thus far,
grass is growing and
no
everything
news is
and-
good news. I mean,
Yeah.
we've walked it, we did the tour on the other side last year. You know, I've not heard from any
Yeah.
residents that we've had issues, so hopefully all is well, but, okay. Okay, well, if the committee can think about it, if we've got other spots, we'll share an agenda ahead of that. With no further input, I'll look to adjourn this meeting at 4:42 PM. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Thanks, PCTV.